It was a cold and rainy Monday morning. The streets were busy with people going to work. Cars filled the roads, and everyone seemed to be in a hurry. Bus Route 27 slowly drove through the city. Behind the wheel was a bus driver named David. David was 54 years old. He had been driving a bus for more than 25 years. Every morning, he greeted every passenger with a smile. "Good morning. Have a nice day." Some people smiled back. Most people didn't. But David never stopped being kind. He believed that a small act of kindness could make someone's day better. As the bus stopped at another station, more passengers climbed on. An elderly woman smiled at David. "Good morning, David." "Good morning, Mrs. Wilson," David replied happily. A young businessman entered next. He paid his fare without looking up from his phone. Then a mother entered with her little daughter. The little girl waved. "Hi, Mr. Bus Driver." David laughed. "Hello. Have a wonderful day at school." The little girl smiled brightly. The bus continued its journey through the rainy city. About 20 minutes later, it stopped at Maple Street. The doors opened. A young man stepped onto the bus. He looked around 23 years old. His clothes were wet from the rain. His shoes were old and dirty. He carried a worn backpack over one shoulder. His face looked tired. Not just tired from a long day. He looked worried. Very worried. The young man walked to the fare machine. He reached into his pocket. He found only a few small coins. He counted them once. Then he counted them again. His face turned pale. He didn't have enough money for the bus fare. He searched every pocket. Nothing. He looked down at the floor. People behind him began to grow impatient. One man sighed loudly. "Come on, some of us have to get to work." Another passenger whispered, "If he can't pay, he shouldn't get on the bus." The young man slowly turned toward David. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "My wallet was stolen yesterday. I only have these coins. I don't have enough for the ticket. I'll get off." He turned toward the door. Before he could leave, David spoke. "Wait." The young man stopped. David smiled kindly. "What is your name?" "My name is Ethan." "Well, Ethan." David opened a small box beside his seat. He took out a few coins from his own pocket. He placed them into the fare machine. Beep. The ticket was paid. Ethan looked surprised. "No, you don't have to do that." David smiled. "Today, I do." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how to thank you." David replied softly. "One day, when life becomes better for you, help someone else. That will be enough." The entire bus became silent. Even the passengers who had complained said nothing. Everyone watched quietly. Ethan slowly nodded. "I promise." He walked to the back of the bus and sat by the window. As the bus continued moving, Ethan looked outside at the falling rain. He thought about everything that had happened during the past week. Only a month ago, he had graduated from university. He had moved to the city with big dreams. He wanted to become a software engineer. He believed his future would be bright. But life had changed very quickly. The company that had offered him a job canceled the position. His savings slowly disappeared. Then, 2 days earlier, someone stole his wallet on the subway. He lost his money, his bank cards, his ID, everything. That morning was his final chance. A small technology company had invited him for a job interview. If he missed the interview, he might lose everything. Without David's kindness, he would never reach the interview. 20 minutes later, the bus arrived downtown. Ethan stood near the door. Before leaving, he looked at David. "Thank you. I'll never forget what you did for me today." David smiled. "Good luck. I hope you get the job." Ethan smiled for the first time that morning. "I'll do my best." The bus doors opened. Ethan disappeared into the crowd. David watched him walk away. Then he closed the doors and continued driving. He believed he would never see the young man again. But he was wrong. 6 months later, someone would return to bus route 27, and that meeting would change both of their lives forever. 6 months had passed. For David, life had not changed very much. Every morning, he still woke up at 5 o'clock. He made a cup of coffee. He put on his clean blue bus driver uniform. Then he drove bus route 27 through the busy city. He still greeted every passenger with a smile. "Good morning. Have a wonderful day." Most people smiled politely. Some were too busy to answer. David never minded. He believed kindness was something you gave without expecting anything in return. The young man named Ethan crossed David's mind from time to time. David often wondered what had happened after that rainy morning. Did Ethan get the job? Did things become better? Or was he still struggling somewhere in the city? David would probably never know. At least, that's what he thought. One Friday afternoon, David finished his final route. He parked the bus at the central station and turned off the engine. He stretched his tired arms and stepped outside. The evening sun painted the sky orange. Passengers hurried past him as they made their way home. Just as David was about to leave, a black luxury car slowly stopped beside the bus. People nearby looked at the expensive car with curiosity. The driver's door opened. A tall young man wearing a dark business suit stepped out. He looked confident. His shoes shined brightly. His watch looked expensive. David glanced at him, but didn't recognize him. The young man smiled. "Excuse me, are you David Carter?" David nodded. "Yes, I am." The young man's smile became even bigger. "I've been looking for you for months." David looked confused. "I'm sorry. Have we met before?" The young man laughed softly. "6 months ago. It was raining. I got on your bus with only a few coins." David looked carefully at the young man's face. Then his eyes became wide. "Ethan?" The young man nodded. "Yes, it's me." David couldn't believe it. "You look completely different." Ethan laughed. "I feel different too." The two men shook hands warmly. "I'm so happy to see you again," David said. "So, did you get the job?" Ethan smiled. "I did, and that changed everything." David invited Ethan to sit on a nearby bench. Cars passed by while the evening breeze blew gently through the station. "So tell me," David said, What happened?" Ethan took a deep breath. "The interview went better than I expected. The manager liked my ideas. A week later, they offered me the job. I worked as hard as I could. I arrived early every day. I stayed late every evening. I wanted to prove that they made the right choice." David listened quietly. 3 months later, I received a promotion. Then, another. Last week, they made me the manager of the software development team. David smiled proudly. "I knew you could do it." Ethan shook his head. "No. You believed in me before I believed in myself." David looked surprised. "It wasn't just the bus fare. You treated me like a person. When everyone else judged me, you showed me kindness. I almost gave up that morning. I even thought about returning to my hometown. But because of you, I went to the interview." David looked down quietly. He never imagined that a few coins could make such a difference. Ethan reached into his briefcase. He carefully placed a white envelope into David's hands. "I have something for you." David opened it. Inside was a thick stack of money. David immediately tried to hand it back. "No, I can't accept this." Ethan smiled. "This isn't payment. It's gratitude." David shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. You bought me one bus ticket. I'm simply returning the kindness." David refused again. "I didn't help you because I wanted money." Ethan expected this answer. He smiled. "I knew you'd say that. So I have another idea." David looked curious. "What is it?" Ethan pointed toward the buses. "Use this money to help other people. If someone can't afford a ticket, let them ride. If someone is hungry, buy them food. If someone needs hope, give them a chance." David looked at the envelope once more. This time, he slowly smiled. "I can do that." Ethan smiled back. "I knew you would." Just then, another bus driver walked over. "David, who's your friend?" David smiled proudly. "This young man once rode my bus, and today he reminded me why kindness always matters." The other driver smiled without understanding the full story. As the sun slowly disappeared below the buildings, Ethan looked at David. "There is one more thing." David raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" "I've been telling everyone about you. My coworkers, my boss, my friends, my family. They all know about the bus driver who believed in a stranger." David laughed. "You've made me famous." Ethan smiled. "You deserve it." The two men stood quietly for a moment. Neither of them realized that someone nearby had been listening to their conversation. A local newspaper reporter had just heard the entire story. She quietly took out her notebook. She knew this wasn't just another news story. It was a story about kindness, a story the whole city needed to hear. Neither David nor Ethan noticed her as they shook hands and said goodbye. But the next morning, everything would change. The next morning, David arrived at the bus station, just like every other day. He put on his blue uniform, he checked his bus, he smiled as the first passengers climbed aboard. Everything felt normal. But something unusual happened. Several passengers looked at him and smiled. One woman said, "Thank you for your kindness." David looked confused. Another passenger shook his hand. "It's an honor to meet you." David didn't understand. What are they talking about? He wondered. A few minutes later, his supervisor walked toward him. "David, can you come to my office?" David nodded. Inside the office, his supervisor placed a newspaper on the desk. The front page showed a large picture of David standing beside his bus. The headline read, "The bus driver who gave hope to a stranger." David was speechless. The newspaper told the story of how David had paid for Ethan's bus ticket when he had nothing. The reporter had written about how one small act of kindness had changed a young man's future. David quietly smiled. "I never expected this." His supervisor smiled. "You deserve it." Throughout the day, more people recognized David. Passengers thanked him. Children waved at him. Some even brought him small gifts. But David accepted only one thing: their smiles. Later that afternoon, Ethan returned to the bus station. This time, he wasn't alone. Several young men and women walked beside him. David recognized none of them. Ethan smiled. "I want you to meet my team." One by one, they shook David's hand. Ethan said, "These people work with me. They all know your story." One young woman stepped forward. "Your kindness inspired me to volunteer at a homeless shelter." Another man smiled. "I started helping elderly people in my neighborhood," a third person said. "I now donate part of my salary every month to students who cannot afford school supplies." David listened quietly. He couldn't believe that one bus ticket had inspired so many people. Ethan smiled. "You didn't just help me. You started something much bigger." Then Ethan handed David a small wooden box. Inside was a silver name badge. It read, "David Carter, the kindest bus driver in the city." David laughed. "I don't need awards." Ethan smiled. "I know, but every hero deserves to know how much they are appreciated." David carefully held the badge. Tears filled his eyes. "I only did what I hoped someone would do for me." Months passed. The story spread across the city. Schools invited David to speak about kindness. Community groups asked him to share his experience. The bus company created a program called Ride with Kindness. Passengers who couldn't afford a ticket could now receive help from donations made by others. Hundreds of people joined the program. Many lives were changed. One rainy morning, David looked into his small donation box. It was full. He smiled. Then he remembered Ethan's words. "When life becomes better for you, help someone else." David looked through the windshield as another passenger stepped onto the bus. The passenger searched every pocket. He looked worried. He didn't have enough money. David smiled. Without saying a word, he reached into his pocket. Once again, he paid for the ticket. Because kindness never ends. It simply begins again with the next person. Thank you for watching The Bus Driver Who Changed a Stranger's Life. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a comment, and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to Fluent English Hub for more inspiring English stories that help you improve your listening, vocabulary, and pronunciation. See you in the next story.